Hi, welcome to the Simple Worship Conversation, also known as...
The morning program with Shannon Moore.
That's right. You got the hang of it.
Finally.
I am here with Reverend Jessica Vacketta.
Hello, everyone.
You've been on the program quite a bit.
I have. It's been a minute, though.
It has been a little while.
I have been on, so it's exciting to be back.
I'm glad to have you. You're always a fun conversation partner.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
This month I have been asking the guests to choose the text. And, as has been the pattern, we have another Old Testament text today. You have chosen Exodus chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be looking from verse 15 through 20 or so. Let's give a little background, and then I'll read the scripture, and then in keeping with the simple worship ethos, how's that?
I like it.
I hope I used it correctly.
I'm sure someone will let us know. Let us know.
Let us know. What do you think? It'll be a short conversation, 10 minutes. I'll set a timer, and then we'll just talk about it. All right. So we know that Joseph became sort of high up in Egypt. There was a famine. His family came. And so that's kind of where we are now.
The end of Genesis.
Right.
Yeah.
Genesis is over. We're moving into Exodus. But now there's a new king in Egypt who's very worried that there are so many Israelites and that they're going to take over. They're going to,
His
join
power
their enemies.
is being threatened.
His power is being threatened.
Or at least he perceives that.
Right. And so he's trying to find a way to take away their power.
Yes.
So that's where we pick up today. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Exodus chapter 1, starting with verse 15. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, "When you act as midwives to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, she shall live." But the midwives feared God. They did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this and allowed the boys to live?" The midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them." So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, "Every boy that is born to the Hebrews you shall throw into the Nile, but you shall let every girl live." I decided to go on to the end of the chapter, verse 22.
That's okay.
So, I'm going to start our timer. All right. Tell me, why did you want to talk about this text?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, I think it's always good to hear stories of women in Scripture because we don't get to hear those as often. And another reason was I think the first time I really remember hearing this story was when I was in seminary. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that it hadn't been shared at some point in my childhood and young adult years, that someone might have preached on it, might have taught a Sunday school class, it might have showed up in VBS or at church camp, but I can't remember that being the case.
Can I make a confession?
Yes, you can.
When you texted me and suggested that we talk about Shiphrah and Puah.
Shiphrah and Puah, yeah.
I was like, okay, who is that? I didn't know.
I appreciate your honesty.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. And then, of course, I know the story.
Mm-hmm.
I know the story
of the midwives.
Mm-hmm. But I didn't remember their names.
Nobody usually does.
I don't remember it in Sunday school. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember it in seminary, actually. I know what happened, but these names were lost to me.
I think I was in Dr. Lance Poppy's homiletics course. And that's where I first really remember this text and the names and talking about the names.
Did another student preach on it, or what?
I think
what
so.
Was the context?
I think so. I think it was an assigned text.
Okay.
That someone had to preach on.
And that made a connection with you.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because I'm like, this is an amazing story of two incredible women It's at the very start of this Exodus journey, this liberation movement, and these women choose to resist and defy the instructions of Pharaoh, risk their own lives.
It's civil disobedience.
It's civil disobedience, yeah. And I just, now and then, I'm like, this is such a powerful story that needs to be heard, that needs to be told. And so that's why I selected it, and why I think I connect with it too.
Okay. So what is it about this civil disobedience? What speaks to you about it? What's at the root of your passion for this story?
Well, I think that these women, you talk about the fear of Pharaoh versus the fear of God a little. And so they, I think I can't speak for them, I don't know. But I choose to believe that they listened to that divine spark, that spirit, their gut, whatever it can be within, and knew this is not right. This is not, as a midwife, someone who is tasked, their entire vocation is about birth and welcoming new life into this world. Mm-hmm. And then they're being told to take that life.
Right.
To murder, these innocent babies. And they can't do that because they answer, they know that they answer to a higher power, a different oath, a special oath. And so knowing that, this is what is truly right versus just following the rules that were forced on, or that were, told to them.
Right. There's also this distinction between the boy children,
yes,
and the girl children.
When you read it this time, and I know you always ask us, what jumped out at you? When after you've read this the scripture, that is what jumped out to me this time, was how Pharaoh says, kill these boy children, these girl children will be fine, whatever. They're not a threat.
Right.
These boys are a threat.
The boys are the threat.
The boys are a threat. So once, it's initially, this, once again, another oppression against women that, comes from this male in power.
Right. And as I interrupt you, I apologize.
Jeez. No, it's okay.
But it's, the women are no threat. And yet it is these two midwives who have thwarted his plan.
Yep. That are helping to literally birth a movement.
And it will be another young woman who, now that he's given this rule that all, everybody has, now it's not just the midwives. Mm-hmm. Now everybody knows if there's a boy born, it must be thrown in the Nile. Mm-hmm. And of course we know that Moses will survive this because of his sister. Mm-hmm. But so it's these women who make it possible. Mm-hmm. It's for Moses and the whole Exodus journey. I mean, without their work, without their defiance, what would have happened?
Yeah. It's a beautiful illustration and a reminder of, when I read this as a female, as a clergy woman, I can't help but think of the women who helped to, continue to birth the church. I mean, even if we jump to the New Testament, which I know we're not doing here, but the resurrection story, I mean, the women were the ones who were first there.
Well, no, I'm glad that you do, because I always want to ask, how does this apply to our Christian faith? The Hebrew scriptures are so rich and valuable, and I like to use them to connect them to our Christian faith. So say a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, you look at this, I mean, Mary birthing Jesus, the women at the tomb, who first discovered that the body wasn't there, or in the garden. Like, I mean, it's just, there are so many stories of women in the Bible, of women in the church, of women, basically funding the Christian church, from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Right.
And yet, when we look back historically, women have been suppressed and oppressed by church leaders. Voices not heard.
When the disciples fled, the women were at the cross.
Yeah.
And for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, a women's group, then I think it was the National Benevolence Association,
Yes.
saved the denomination.
They did. And that's a beautiful story. I don't know if people know it, of when they were, it started as this group of women were gathering in a basement to pray every day or weekly. And they were literally stepping over people to get there. And they're like, this is not, we are ignoring Jesus on the road, and stepping over to come and pray. Like, what is the church really about?
Right.
So.
Do you find, though, that even as far as we've come, I was telling a friend of mine the other day that I have family members who cannot, like, if I have family members who, if they were referring to you, would call you a lady preacher or a lady minister. It's never, for some people, it's never just a minister. They have to put the qualifier on it. Do you run into that a lot?
Yes. I also run into, and granted, I serve a very large church and I'm pretty young, but when people ask where I serve or what I do, and it's like, oh, well, what do you do? If I say I'm a minister at University Christian Church, or I'm a minister at a church in Fort Worth, oh, well, what type of minister? Like, they always make that assumption. Are you the children's minister? Are you the youth minister? Not that, these are all, types of ministry that are very important and that are calls, but they make the assumption in their eyes that I don't do things that they would think a minister does, like preach and teach and all of that. So weddings and funerals.
Right.
And I've had times here, I've officiated weddings here where I'm welcoming families from, other areas and different parts of the state and that, don't go to church here, and introducing myself, or they come over and they're like, excuse me, can you let us know when the minister is going to get here? And I'm like, oh, I'm the minister. What? Yeah. and then whoever's getting married is like embarrassed.
Right,
they're like, oh my gosh, sorry. I'm like, it's okay, Yeah. So,
one more thing that stood out to me when I was reading this text was that when they came up with this story about why they weren't killing.
Oh, yes.
Yes. That's just so, they're so strong.
They are.
They just have the babies before we can get there. But what stands out to me is that this pleased God. That this act of
defiance,
defying this unjust
and this fib.
Right, and that was one of the things that
too soon!
That I do remember as a child. Like I said, I know the story, I just didn't remember the names. But that they lied.
Yeah.
That was a little problem for me when I was a kid.
And I think about that too, because honesty is very important, being authentic. But when I look at this, when I think of good trouble is a phrase John Lewis that people are talking.
That came to my mind
an important thing people are talking a lot about. And here, right here, I'm like, this is good trouble, and it's based part of it on not telling the truth.
We might have to return. We might have to continue this later.
We might.
Because we just got to that.
I know. It's been too long. Sorry.
We got to follow the rules.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for being with us today, and I hope that you will read what happens before and after this. Exodus chapter 1. Go ahead, read into chapter 2, see what happens. Very interesting. Hope you have a great week. Maybe get into some good trouble, and we'll see you next time.
And remember those names.